All right, we're still working on some giants. Repeat after me. Noah?
Noah.
Good. You got his name right. You can make a difference. Now let's try that again. Repeat after me. You can make a difference.
You can make a difference.
Thank you. And then Esther taught us that God has a place and a plan. Turn to a neighbor and say, God has a place and a plan for you.
God has a place and a plan for you.
Joseph said, don't ever give up the dream God gives you. Turn to someone and say that to them. Don't give up the dream.
Don't give up the dream.
Rebecca says, living giving is the best way to live. I won't make you say that. That's too complicated. Living giving, the best way to live. Moses teaches us to live in the faith zone. And Abraham taught us that God always, 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 always does the right thing. Now, would you be surprised if I told you that all of these giants that we've just listed have had several things in common? They're all in the Old Testament. I could hear one of you thinking it from here. They're all old, some of you were thinking. Some of you might even be thinking they all had God on their side. Would it be true? If you were in Sunday school, you'd learn that all of them actually had responded to a call to go somewhere. But there's one more thing that they all had in common. And you're going to smile when I say this, because you're going to say, well, that could be me too. Just get ready to say it. Because here it comes. The one thing that all of the giants of faith had in common was that they all had problems. How many of you raised your hand earlier when I said, how many of you have problems? Guess what? You're just like all of the giants we've talked about for the last 6 weeks. Doesn't that make you feel better? Doesn't it make you feel better that our giants had problems? Oh, you think they didn't? Noah had to build a boat in the desert where there's no wood to build a boat. Esther had problems. Her parents had died. She was left to an uncle who didn't have children. Joseph, his family, well, he had one, but they hated him. Rebecca, living in the wilderness, watching her father's flocks, has to get up and move within minutes, it seems, to marry someone she probably hadn't even heard of. Moses, he had problems. He was a murderer. He'd been a deserted baby, sort of. And then he became leader of 600,000 people that wanted to eat every day. Think about those kinds of problems. And then Abraham, 99 years old, and he gets to have a child. Can you imagine having a teenager at the ripe old age of 110? Most of you can't imagine having a teenager at the age of 35 or 40. It puts fear into your very hearts. And I guarantee you that every single one of these giants had more problems than the ones you listed. Some of them had financial problems. Any of you ever have a financial problem? What about relationship problems? Any of you ever have any relationship problems? Or do you just get along with everyone perfectly all the time, whether or not anything good or bad happens? What about car problems? Any of you ever have car problems? Or children problems? Or parent problems? Careful there. We are still able to take that vote. You know, how long can the list of problems be? can come up with a problem, and a problem, and a problem, and a problem, can't we? In fact, some of us are so good at problems, we look for problems even when they aren't there. Quit pointing. Bad news is there were more than one of you pointing. That's pretty scary. I want you to think with me about problems for a minute. What's the problem with problems? Isn't it true that they usually keep us from reaching our goals or from becoming who we want to be or from stopping us from moving forward? Isn't that true? Isn't that right? No! It's wrong. I want you to say it. Wrong! Loud. Oh, come on. Wrong! Man, you need some go juice or something this morning. Turn to a neighbor and say, Pastor David is wrong.
Pastor David is wrong.
You see, problems, no matter how big they are or how small they are, do not ever keep you from reaching your dreams or becoming your best self or achieving all that is possible. Quite frankly, it's only how we react to them that decides our fate. So my friends, what do when you have a problem? Do you throw your hands up in exasperation and say, oh, that's all, I can't do anything else? I give up. I surrender. And we're not talking about the hymn that goes, I surrender all to Jesus. What do you do when you have a problem? Do you say, I can solve it, I can solve anything? Well, I'm going to tell you that neither of those answers really are the best way to approach problems. In fact, if you just give up the problem, have you ever noticed that problems never seem to go away until you deal with them? I have one friend whose solution to every problem is to run away. I know people who have sold their houses and moved to get away from their problems. And then I get a phone call saying, I still have a problem. Well, the problem is they pack the problem in a suitcase and take it with them. Because you see, our problems are generally our problems. And our place of residence has little to do with them. But problems, my friend, are what today's giant tells us about. Our giant today is a guy named Nehemiah. He's another one of those guys that, if I said, how many of you knew the name Nehemiah, you might think of the football player. Thank you, Mary. I just had to work that in there. You know, we had a football player named Ronaldo Nehemiah. Yeah, you know, I don't know. But I remember. And what I really remember is that most of us have no idea who Nehemiah is or what he did. And that's too bad, because Nehemiah was a problem solver. So what was the problem, you asked? I knew you were going to ask, so I'm going to tell you the problem. The problem is Nehemiah was a very powerful man in the king of Persia's court. He was the cupbearer to the king. In other words, he brought the king every drink. And in Persia, that was an important job. Because not only did you bring it to the king, but the first thing you did when you handed it to him was to take a drink beforehand. Just in case it was poison. See how this guy's kind of important to the king? And not only that, the king liked Nehemiah. And the king appreciated what Nehemiah did. Nehemiah has it all together. He has a great job. He's actually a foreigner in the king's service. He has access to the privileges of the palace. He is, in fact, the keeper of the keys to the wine cooler, or the wine, whatever it's, thank you. You see, he's important. Because everything the king drank went through him. So what kind of problem did this guy have? He seemed to have it all. How many of you know somebody that seems to have it all and all together? On the surface, it doesn't seem like he could have any trouble at all. Any problems whatsoever. But if you had read the first part of chapter 2 of Nehemiah, you would have found out that his brother had come to visit. And his brother was one of the ones left behind in the exile in Jerusalem. And the problem was the city's walls were falling down. They had been knocked down over the years by people who conquered Jerusalem, and the city gates had been burned, and so there was no protection for anybody in the city. Marauders could come in and steal and kill almost without any defenses. His hometown is in ruins, so his heart's broken. And one day he's serving the king. And the king looks at him and says, Nehemiah, what's the problem? You're sad today. Now when the king notices that one of the slaves is sad, you're pretty sad. And then the king asks about him, and I love the passage in chapter 2. It says, I was afraid, but I gathered myself up and said to the king, this is the problem. Nehemiah, my friends, teaches us some things about our problems. It teaches us that we sometimes have to do something most of us are not very good at. You see, because we've been taught to do what I'm going to tell you is to be weak or to be powerless. To do what Nehemiah is going to teach us to do here is to say that I'm not strong enough or I'm not good enough. Because what Nehemiah teaches us is that to face our problems, we have to ask for help. How many of you love to ask for help? Those of you who don't have your hand up at this time, this sermon is especially for you. Because, my friends, one of the great truths of the gospel is that you don't have it all together. Now, I know some of you look like you do. Some of you even act like you do. And I'm one of the biggest culprits at times. It's against our religion almost to look weak, or to be mean, or to look like we're hurting. It's against the principles we've all been taught. And we don't like the idea of asking for help. We don't like asking for help because, quite frankly, when we ask people for help, then people know our weaknesses. People know our shortcomings. But I want you to look at somebody sitting near you. None of you turn your head. I want you to know. Not one of you, when I said to do that, turned and looked at someone. I'm going to tell you again. Go ahead. Turn and look at somebody. It's okay. I promise they won't bite yet. Do you think that the people you just turned and looked at don't already know that you have problems? has problems. And we act like we don't have a single one. Well, Nehemiah teaches us about asking for help. I know you've all been taught you should be able to take care of your own problems. I know. My father tried to teach me that. He wasn't any good at asking for help either. Well, Nehemiah teaches us to ask for help at 5 different times. And these are important. First of all, Nehemiah teaches us to ask for help when the problem is bigger than you are. In other words, when the task is so great, you see, Nehemiah wanted to go rebuild the city. His city. It was falling down. It was in disrepair. The bad guys were coming in every day and wiping it out over and over again. That's bigger than one man. So he asked for help. He asked the king for help. Secondly, we need to learn to ask for help when our problems become personal. You see, the reason Nehemiah went to the king is because his brother came to him and said, "Our town is falling down. The walls are wiped out." You see, when our problems become personal, then there's more likely an idea or a hope we're going to ask for help. The third thing is that Nehemiah teaches us to ask for help when we are willing to do our part to solve the problem. Notice I didn't say when we were going to solve the problem all by ourselves. But we have to, when we ask for help, we have to be prepared and ready to be part of the solution. I know people all the time who identify problems. That's what they do. See that? That's a problem over there. That's a problem over there. That's a problem over there. Well, can you help solve it? No, it's not my job, not my calling, not what I'm supposed to do. You see, you're only going to solve your problems when you're willing to help become part of the solution. And some of us don't want to be a part of the solution. We just want to be the problem. Isn't it true? We want to be the problem. The fourth time to ask for help is when we sense or see God's approval for the vision about what's to happen. When God's calling us to something, when we see where God's pointing and leading, we're supposed to be asking for help. And the fifth time is the hardest, I think. Because most of us in this room don't want to cause any waves. Don't want to create a stir. Don't want to rock the boat, so to speak. So we need to learn to ask for help. Nehemiah teaches us when other people oppose us. Not everyone wanted the walls of Jerusalem to be rebuilt. There were government officials who were opposed to it. There were government officials who were making money by keeping the walls broken down. There's some things about Nehemiah's message that can really be encouraging to us, however. There are 3 things that Nehemiah shares with us about asking for help that are important for us to know. And the first is this: we need to ask for help even though it's not easy. Because, quite frankly, there are people willing and ready to help. There are people willing and ready to help if we just let them know. Secondly, not everyone's going to help. And that's okay. If you just keep working and leading, it's okay. You don't need it. You just need each other. Now, when you look around this room, there's 51 or 52 people in the room this morning, and as I look around this room, I'm amazed at the talent in this room. There's some amazing talent in this room. There are some amazing gifts and abilities in this room. There are some amazing resources that I guarantee most of you don't know about. Because we don't talk about those kinds of things. Because we don't talk about our problems. We don't talk about solving life's issues like Nehemiah did. By the way, do you know what happened when Nehemiah went to Jerusalem and rebuilt the walls? He had people who opposed him, but he organized groups of people to rebuild the gates and to rebuild the walls and to reestablish worship within the city of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem began to thrive again. All because of one man who knew that he had to ask for help. So I wonder what would happen in our lives as the church if we really asked for help. What would happen if we handed out the church information forms again and said, we need your help to do some things at First Christian Church, to change some lives in the city of Gurney? What if I said, we need some people to help Donna Lenz with the worship department in creating a great and wonderful worship atmosphere, or to help Keith Toach keep our building in good shape and our grounds clean and ready for Sunday mornings, or our local and world concerns committee with Christy and Roz leading it, creating teams of volunteers at Allendale and other places, reaching around the world through our special offerings. What would happen if I told you the choir needs some more of you to sing when we start in August? You know, I was standing up here, this is just a plug, Sheila, I don't know if you noticed, but when you were singing How Great Is Our God, we had like 4 or 5 great harmonies going on in the room. It was gorgeous. Some of you who have been saying you can't sing have been lying. What if you had gifts and talents that could help our stewardship and finance team, or our Christian education team with Tanya and Julie? What would happen if instead of saying, oh, I've already done my share, or I've already done, or the problem's too big, we can't solve it? What if instead we said, I can do something about it? Well, the walls would be rebuilt. That's what would happen. The gates would be made strong. The ministries would be blessed. And lives would be changed. If we instead looked for solutions to the problems of things like we need some more greeters. Doesn't seem like a problem, but you know what? We have trouble getting people to greet. What if we needed some more tech people? Joe back here, you know what? Joe is growing up. I don't know if you've noticed. He's about 6'12" and 13 and a half inches or so. But he's off to college on the 18th. And he's not going to come back from Champaign every Sunday to run the sound system. You aren't, are you? I think we ought to vote on that. We need people to run the camera. We need people to drive people to church. And we need people to say, yes, please drive me to church. And we need some people to pray. That sounds so ridiculous to say from the pulpit. We need some people to pray. We are a church with a purpose and a mission, but Nehemiah is right. We can only achieve it by working together and asking for the help we need to make it happen. Nehemiah was a giant because he knew. He knew that he had to bring the people together. He knew that he had to ask for help, and he had to ask for people's help where it was available. You see, on the 21st of this month, we're going to have a planning meeting as a church. The leadership's meeting, and we're going to create a plan to do just this very thing. To create a plan. And one of the questions we're going to ask over and over again is, who will step up to help us reach our goals? Who will step up to serve in such a way that they don't feel overworked, overburdened, burnt out, however you want to describe it? My friends, as we sing our closing song, I would invite you to think about how you can serve not only the church, but your community. Not only the community, but your God. And who you can ask to help. And how you might be asked to help. And say yes as you respond. Oh God, as we celebrate your giants of the faith, may we understand that they all had problems. They all had trials. But as Nehemiah taught, there's always a solution. You just have to sometimes ask for help. So Lord, we're asking for your help so that we can find help from others this